Jonathan is the co-founder and chief science officer of QuantuMDx. They are quite literally a revolutionary biotech firm. I've known John for a really long time, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point today. But he has been in a business that is a lot more challenging than, frankly, a lot of the businesses I've been in. When you're dealing with technology, you're dealing with science, and frankly, you're breaking new bounds of what's possible. Sometimes you hit these limits where maybe other people say, you're not going to break through these barriers. I think he and I talked a lot about what would be great for this week's show, and we thought touching on a subject of kind of knowing your limits, knowing when to ignore people telling you should have those limits, and when to kind of push through as an entrepreneur or as a leader or even in your career. John has a fascinating background. I know it's going to make for a really good show and quite a few laughs. And with that, welcome to this week's O-Ship. Welcome, John. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, Freddie. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I kind of only half see you with you've got the mask. And did I catch a glove when you waved at me?
You did indeed. Yeah, I'm trying to stay COVID safe at the moment. We've got a bit of an outbreak in the office, so we're just being extra especially careful. But I will remove my mask briefly just to say hi. I don't want any of my staff catching me without it.
Yeah. So you're in full lab gear here. I think I want to definitely hear about that. But I think just to set it up a little bit, I know you really well. Some of our audience doesn't know you nearly as well as I do. Could you give people a little bit of your background and you and your business?
Sure. Yeah. No problem. And I promise I won't go on like I normally do. So. I'm a science geek. As Freddie always used to call me, a genietard, whereas I was very good at certain things, but they're completely useless at other things. And so when I discovered science, I latched onto that and held onto it for everything I could get, because frankly, that was the only thing I was good at. I did a degree in genomics and genetics at Sussex, and then went on to Harvard for a genomics PhD, which I've never finished, much to my mother's hate. And then after that, I went into pathology, and we all know about clinical testing now, thanks to this pandemic. And that's really where I got this passion for doing DNA-based diagnostics. And back then, it wasn't really well done, and so I just figured I would invent something instead. And 15 years later, here we are, and this is my product. I'm happy to walk you through it if you want.
Yeah, I love that. It's really. I remember when I've gone through the journey of you building it, and I think having you explain it to people would be great. So show us the QPOC.
Sure. So this is our QPOC device. On the video here, you can see Jess is putting a sample into the test disposable, and then scanning the barcode and putting it into the device. And literally, all you have to do is press go, and that's all you have to do. And then 30 minutes later, you're going to get a result. So this isn't like a lateral flow test like your pregnancy strips that will give a very inaccurate result. This is a PCR, a gold standard test result, which is rarely wrong. It's presently in clinical trials at the moment, and it's performing brilliantly. So I'm thrilled with the way in which things are going at the moment. And it's just quick and it works.
I love it, and really compact, and it seems like something that's in a world right now where there's a lot of you hear people with all these errors in the test, seems like it would make a lot of sense. One of the things that I thought would be fun to get into today is, you've had quite a journey with this product. I've known you for a really long time, and I think it's worth disclaiming. One of my best friends. We've known each other since childhood. Oh yeah, that's how far back we go. I just thought, what's the most inappropriate photo? I like the Robert Smith Cure like hair you've got there. I was trying to work out how I got my hair like that, and I remember now I would take my hair and I would just spin it in a circle in the front, and it would kind of do that pop up thing. I was like, can I do that with hairspray? And then as I started thinking about it more, I was like, oh, yeah, that probably explains a lot of this. Maybe it's not a good idea just to spin the front of your hair and do that. So yeah, live and learn. But I saw you went from that to you drop out of university, you come back and you built a lab in your house. And how many years did you work on it for?
Oh, I was there for, absolutely way too long. So about 7 years in total, I guess. And when you say build, you know my DIY skills are not that great, so I had to have my dad come and help me out and build that for me.
Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, and every time he was nailing in another thing for the lab bench, he was muttering under his breath, "Why did you leave that really good job at the hospital? Why did you leave it? Why? And now what are you going to do with your life? You're throwing it all away."
And I have to be honest with you in saying, I've always thought, and I mean this sincerely, I've always thought you were one of the smartest, if not the smartest person I know. But 2 years in, I'm like, man, he's building this thing. It's going to change the world. 3 years in, I'm like, man, this is a really hard challenge. Like, but he's going to get there. 4 years in, I was like, man, this is really hard. Like, he's broken. How is he going to get through this? But around 6 or 7 years, I was like, I think he's lost his mind. We need to have a chat with him and say, like, look, we love you, but it's time. You got to pack it in. Like, this isn't going to happen. And you told us to get stuffed, and that turned out to be a really good idea. But how do you know? Like, how do you know? Like, when is pushing yourself beyond the limit to try and do something right, and when is it obsession? You know what I mean? Or is it both? I don't know.
I mean, I've been toying around with that question for some time now. What is that drive that an entrepreneur has that fills them with all that belief that they're right and everybody else around them is wrong? And I don't think there's any real answer to that. I mean, it's hindsight is 20/20, and so it's easy for me to sit here and say I was right. And I know I promised I wasn't going to mention it, but there was that Theranos company who made decisions. They just made decisions and thought they were right, and they pushed it too far. And it's so you need a sense of realism along with your self belief and the belief in your product and your company, and then you can push on. And if you don't have that, and if you don't have the domain expertise to make that call, then forget about it. You're in a tricky space, and you end up in jail, hopefully.
I mean, if you were to look at someone else that wasn't in science, and it's just a general sense of this kind of like self belief, do you always trust yourself, or is there some advisor that you should trust more than yourself? Were there other people rooting you on, even when one of your best friends was saying maybe you should pack it in? I mean, clearly other people kept saying go for it, or were you really the only voice in your head saying I should keep pushing for this? I don't think I've ever asked you this before, by the way.
And I'm glad you've never asked, because you're going to laugh at the other. So for some reason, at one point, and it must have been just around about 2011, I think it was, everybody was saying to stop, and then even the voice in my head started telling me to stop.
Sure. And
I just kept on going. And to this day, I don't know why I did that, but I'm glad I did, obviously.
Thank God. Yeah. On an easier question, is there any time that would tell you it was probably time to call it on your Christmas decorations? Because I did notice that Santa is still behind you, and we're into February.
See, this is not Santa. This is our company. Mascot, Guani, which is the G in the genetic code.
Oh, yes, he looks like a little scientist. I thought that was Santa back there. My bad.
You might not be able to see the little QuantuMDx there. So when I was in Maine a few years ago, I was out for a walk, and I found this woman who was sculpting out of tree trunks with a saw and just making these amazing things. So I offered to to commission this piece from her, and she said, yeah, and it was the hardest thing in the world to get that through Virgin Atlantic's check-in.
I was convinced it was a really weird Santa sculpture. I was like, oh man, I was like, he's going to be one of those guys that has like his Christmas decorations out in April kind of thing. But no, okay, I stay.
Yeah, even weird.
So we touched on this earlier. I have to go back, and I want to go back to this subject around leadership and entrepreneurialism. But obviously, we do have to address the elephant in the room. So you've got a mask on. You're wearing gloves. So you're in it. So where are you now? What does it mean to have an outbreak there? And you're in our world, we call this an oh shit moment, and it seems like you kind of powering through an oh shit moment live on the show with us right now, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this really was an oh shit moment. So to give you a bit of background, so we've got 80 staff here in this building. We've got labs and engineering facilities and offices. And the first thing anybody does when they walk through the door is take a swab, and that goes straight to our lab. And by around about 3 o'clock every afternoon, we get the results out. Today, we've got a number of positives. And so literally just before, like an hour ago, we got the number of positives. So we've had to isolate them. And we're now re-swabbing and testing all of their contacts and doing a deep clean of the entire office building, including these vapor bombs that we put off to kill everything. And we are having to do this every other week, I guess, when a new employee comes in with COVID. But it's the only way to maintain business continuity. If we didn't do this, there'll be absolutely no way that we would have been able to deliver the QPOP device to our timelines. And it's fortunate for us that we are able to do testing on site. But it was an oh shit moment when I got the call. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this thing with Freddie, and yet everyone's running around panicking.
Oh my God. Well, we appreciate you doing that, and obviously, best wishes to everyone there. And I hope anyone who got it pulls through as soundly as they can.
I appreciate that.
COVID's no joke. You talked about business continuity a second ago. So your test, you've kind of gone through all these years of perfecting the product. I think you've kind of dodged some bullets over the years of trying to get to where you are now, and then COVID hit and effectively made your product essential. I mean, really, really essential. Can you share a little bit around first off, just on the business side, how are people utilizing your product in addressing COVID?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like you said, the business of diagnostics is brutal. We all know it's brutal, and one of the reasons it's brutal is it's underappreciated, or at least pre-pandemic was underappreciated. It didn't command the same sort of returns that you would expect from, for instance, a therapeutic in the pharmaceutical industry, and it was an awful lot more complex, with very few people understanding the nuances of what sensitivity and specificity has. Negative predictive value, positive predictive value, all the statistics behind it all. Very, very difficult to understand due to its complexity. Then COVID strikes, and then suddenly everybody realizes that they should have been investing in diagnostics for years, and that there simply wasn't enough around. And then it shone a spotlight on our industry in a way that we've never had before. It released lots of government funds, and it has inspired the acceleration and the development of new and novel technologies such as QPOP, which is phenomenal. And so we're now seeing all of these investments start emerging and start coming to the market. And a technology like ours, it could be game changing in the sense that it is high quality, rapid PCR testing.
And so, I mean, is the government kind of in the UK, are they kind of falling or reaching out to you to implement this? I mean, where do you stand with it now? Is it in the market or?
Yeah, so we've got a clinical study running with 3, soon to be 4 NHS hospitals. It's their number one priority at the moment, which is great. We're about 300 patients into a 400 patient study, and the data is just awesome. And so we have now started to think about how we work out a contract with the government and also with other governments around the world. And interestingly now, private companies such as large banks, pharmaceutical companies are looking at this kind of technology for business continuity, because you want to be able to test your stuff. And if you can do it accurately and quickly, then that's the best way to keep everyone protected.
I'm going to go back to our original theme here. So, the theme was ultimately around when do you know when to call it, and when do you keep pushing through. So you've had that early on in your career, when the early birth of this company, and then over the last couple of years, I think there's also been some instances, and I'm not going to get into too details, and I don't think this puts you in any awkward spots, but I know that there's been some serious offers made on your company, and your best friend seems to keep giving you crap advice, that I hope I'm not ruining my credibility with all the other people that keep coming to me for advice. But I was like, you should sell the business. You should, this is great. You should do this. Would change your life forever. And you basically ignored me again. And so, but I also feel like, there's some, and I know there's been some scary moments in the development of this business. If you got any kind of thoughts or comments on, like, I guess how it's one thing to call it early on, but it's another thing to call it when you're later on. Like, how big do you get this? And do you want to avoid the kind of what they call the Icarus effect of kind of flying too high to the sun. I think it's also hard to kind of figure out when to call it then. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, turning down an offer that could change your life is difficult at the best of times. I again, to this day, I'm not quite sure what drove that decision, other than a self-belief that this technology was worth more than they were offering. But still, the temptation is real, and it's very difficult to make that decision. I mean, I think at that point we were very much helped by discussions with our advisors and some industry experts as well about, what is the potential of this? Are we selling ourselves short? Weighing up the risk.
That was pre-COVID, wasn't it? I mean, no one was even factoring in the COVID thing back then as well. Wow.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I predicted the pandemic, so it was an easy decision from that perspective, I guess. But it was. It's difficult. You can't. I've been trying to analyze all of these decisions and try and figure out, what is the thing that stops you, what is the thing that drives you on, to a point, it's ego, but you can't let that take over, because if you let your ego take over, then you make dumb decisions. And the other big element is knowledge of your sector. So for me, I know this sector, and I know this technology is markedly different from everything else, and it therefore is got this unique setting, and therefore has much bigger value than they were offering. And so by kind of building this kind of enough ego to know that I could drive it on, and enough knowledge of the sector to know that it wasn't going to be a waste. But it's a judgment call.
What I'm hearing here, because I think when we decided we were going to talk about this subject, we decided at the time, let's not come up with the answer. Let's think about it together, on our ship. And you said ego, but I want to correct you on that. I think ego sometimes has negative connotations, and ego can be a bad thing, but there's also confidence. And ego, to me, I think, is your kind of view of self-worth, and sometimes it could be a bad thing, but there's nothing wrong with being really confident. I'd say what's really bad is when confidence exceeds capability. And so maybe that's when it goes. That's
and with a sprinkling of delusion over the top. I mean, that's a heady mixture. You've got to be pretty careful.
Yeah, and I think there's you're factoring in like your own capability, your own confidence, and frankly, then even if you have all the capability in the world and the confidence, you have to factor in market factors, right? How much other capability might there be out in the market?
So that's a really good point, and something that I've been thinking about. So when we were developing this device, we got other bits of functional bits on here that we wanted to include. But when we were looking at speed to market, was it too risky to go? I wanted to keep on developing it, but then through discussions with board members, with people in the market, we decided that what we were going to do was actually we were just going to get the minimum viable product out quickly and then develop it on it like that. And so that for me was probably one of the biggest, Icarus moments for me, because we could have been driving this to the point of running out of money and then never getting to market. So there's a whole load of different things in that same question.
I'm going to go back to the technology for a second. One of the dangers to doing loads of video conferences with people is I always find myself, kind of looking around the room and so on. They're there. Cut back to John, is that hot sauce next to you? It looks like it says hot. Is that hot sauce?
This is JD's hot honey, chili infused honey sauce.
How much hot sauce do you have to use in the QPOC testing system to get a good result?
Not that much. It's more in the operator. So I have a pizza on display. So I've got my hot sauce there and a beer ready to roll after this, because over here it's coming up to 5. Yeah, it's been a rough day with all this
that makes perfect sense. I kept looking at it, and I was like, I thought it was some kind of science thing, and I kept reading. I was like, I think it says hot sauce. Okay, I just wanted to double check, because it was distracting me, like the not Santa Claus decoration you have in the background. So I feel like you were tempting me with lots of like little props that you knew that I'm just too ADD not to try and ask about. So
that is absolutely. So this set design is all designed because I know you very well, and you wouldn't be able to help but bring it up.
For those of you who tune in every week for OSHIP, I think you guys noticed that I'm always convinced that my glasses are wrong. I was just about to start touching them to fix them because I feel like they're lopsided, and the camera to screen is inverted, so I always get confused and I fiddle it the wrong direction. And so I started to correct my glasses in the pre-show with John, and he goes, that's kind of like your thing. He's like, I've noticed that you're always fiddling with your glasses on every episode. So now I'm self-conscious. I don't want to do it. So you're going to see a bigger trend of like the glasses just kind of like this, and me just being like, just own it. Don't touch it, because if I touch it, then it's like my thing. So I'm going to watch out for that now. So I'm going to try my best to get this back to normal. But I appreciate it. So this is what I guess my point is, what being good friends are all about. You notice the little details in their life. So going back to you, John, I want to just kind of talk about maybe your advice for other folks that are out there. Whether you're a startup that's in the medical field, or you're consulting, or you're starting any kind of business out there. Is there any kind of guidance or advice that you would give if you were mentoring someone right now about following their passions?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first thing, don't go into diagnostics. Horrible thing.
Smart.
and I will crush you if you do.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But yeah, I mean, I think the best advice that I got was, know your domain, know your stuff. If you don't know it inside out and historically, and have an idea of where it's going in the future, forget about it. Because as we were talking before, part of making these decisions is having that depth of knowledge within your field to be able to make a smart decision, rather than go on gut or ego or whatever it is, fake confidence. So yeah, know your stuff, and once you know your stuff, persevering and getting passion and joy out of what you're doing, that just comes easy. And you can put in the long hours, which you will definitely have to do. And you'll be able to suffer all the setbacks and the worries about cash flow and paying bills and salaries. Well, better not say that too loud. And having COVID and no wage, that's a bad day.
So much to my annoyance, I hate to admit, I think you are probably the smartest person that I'm friends with and that I know. Who's this? And please don't say yourself. Who's the smartest person you know?
Guanine.
But for real though, I know you've met some really brilliant people out there, and who have you run into out there that's really just kind of blown your mind by their mind?
Yeah, so the smartest person I've ever met by a mile is Bill Gates. I mean, I've met him a bunch of times, and yeah, I mean, I had one hell of a conversation with him when I first met him. Absolutely brilliant.
And was he talking to you about science stuff or business stuff?
It was science, purely science, and not just science, diagnostics, and he understood some of the subtleties and the nuances of PCR assay design and how we generate signals, and his depth of knowledge in my field was incredible, it was just did
it catch you off guard out of interest?
Yeah, it totally caught me off guard. And I walked into that meeting and I bought myself one of those Microsoft tablets and a Microsoft phone, and I sat because I thought, well, better take the right stuff. And he sat down and he had his Apple phone. And I thought,
that's amazing. It's priceless. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, he's someone. If I did list the kind of people out there that I really truly admire, he'd be pretty much top of that list. I think there was this time then I don't know 15 years ago or something. People talk about Microsoft being this evil empire or whatever. And he turned out to be one of the greatest philanthropists in the history of humankind. And I guess it doesn't surprise me that much that he would immerse himself in your world because of what he's trying to do in terms of global health in places like Africa. So just a very, very impressive guy. So that's cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
No
look, John, this has been a really great episode. I'd love to. This year, my plan for OSHIP is I want to do more kind of panels and bringing groups of guests in. I always love chatting with you. I love sharing that chat with our audience today. But I'd love to have you come back on sometime in the future as well.
Well, I would love to, assuming I'm not too big for you by then. So thank you very much.
I hope not to. We'll make you the sponsor. So look, I'd love to thank everyone that's tuned in and watched this episode. OSHIP is something I do just for fun. I love bringing in these great entrepreneurs and leaders I'm very fortunate to know and share whatever experiences they have to try and inspire people or maybe help people when they're having an OSHIP moment. But the best way you can support the show is give us a like, share us with your friends, tell someone else about it, subscribe on oshipshow.com. But just supporting the show really means a lot to us. And we really appreciate you tuning in, and we hope to see you next week on this fun show, OSHIP. Thanks, John.
Cheers.